Everyone has a story to tell. Shining a light on stories that uplift us, that change us, that inspire us. The Yogi Hour. Listen, be inspired. Hi, and welcome back to this week's Yogi Hour. We're here every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. On this beautiful day. It's been a nice sunshine for the last week here in Ireland. Please like or subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook. This week we've got a very, very interesting individual with the name of Mark Cleary. He is a profound healer, I think, in my own words. And please say hi, Mark. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for that introduction.
Nice. It's lovely to see you again. It's
yeah,
been.
Same here.
Sorry, I'm just trying to. It's been a couple of weeks since I was talking to you last.
Yeah.
Over in your place. So how are you?
Yeah, good. All good. I'm in a really happy place right now at the moment.
Good.
I moved into a new home a few weeks ago, and yeah, it's all exciting times.
Now, is this in Ireland or in Spain?
No, in Spain. Okay. I've moved from being a mountain man to the coast. Big difference.
A caveman.
I can walk the beach now in the mornings instead of the hills. So yeah, it's good.
It'd be nice to have the beach outside your back door.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as I mentioned, Mark is a healer. I know I've had some work done with him before, and that's why I wanted to kind of bring him on the show. Was to talk about healing and the type of healing that you do, because it was definitely something a lot different than what I ever kind of did myself or imagined was out there. So maybe you could kind of give some background about it and how you got into it.
I always find the most difficult thing, and even lots of my clients say, how do you explain what you do? I tried to tell somebody, and it's so difficult. So yeah, I suppose what I do today, it's something that I've just absolutely grown into through. If I go back, we're at the end of March here, and I actually started practicing in March 91. So it's just the end of 30 years now, this month, that I've been practicing. And I started out as a physical therapist in my very late 20s. I was 29 at the time. And my practice, or the way that I work, has just developed as I've grown older and explored myself inwardly. And in those early days, we're all very physical in our 20s and 30s. That's how we function in the world, I think. But then
I don't know. I don't think I was ever very physical.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. That's they're the year of the sports person, aren't they?
Yeah.
As I grew out of that and got into, I was already doing martial arts since I was 20, and that slowly progressed into yoga, and in my 30s I started to look at meditation. And to be honest with you, I know we're going to touch on some subjects tonight. For me, it all started to change. I was married when I was 25, and by the time I was 33, I wasn't married anymore. And there was a point where I looked at myself, I suppose, and said, how did that happen? You get married for the rest of your life, and all of a sudden here I was in my mid-30s, and it was gone. And the best thing
maybe it was that incident that made you kind of have to reflect on yourself.
Absolutely it was. And the best thing that happened to me was I sat with, I wouldn't call them a counselor, but I sat speaking to someone who started to show me who I was and the part I played, or the role I played in that breakup, I suppose. And from there, I just started to learn about me and who I was, and started to take on practices for personal development. And as I began to do that, the work started to change with me as I changed as a person. I started to see myself, get to know myself deeper, and then that allowed me to see people on a deeper level. So it went from being a physical worker working on bodies, excuse me, to now getting to know people deeper and to be able to figure out why they might have to keep coming to the clinic and getting to know them, who they were on an emotional level. As I was getting to know who I was on an emotional level, it was just a big reflection for me, I suppose. I always looked on my work as a guide to how I was developing, and it just started to become healing energy work from that point. It wasn't something I ever went off to study to be an energy healer. It just absolutely developed as I opened myself up. So,
And that's probably the kind of most important part, because you've gone from, say, using the physical body to trying to help the physical body, and then it's kind of changing to, the mind,
yeah,
and the emotional aspect of people, not just the physical body.
And so then I suppose now at my age, it's 30 years later, I'm 60, and I suppose we all progress in that way as we get older. I'm seeing life in from a different pair of eyes than I would have seen them 30 years ago, and this all comes along with it, I suppose. So yeah, I just truly see it today. What I do is I think of it as healing myself. And as I do that, I always, when I teach, I say to people, just shine your own light, and people will want to know what you're doing, and then you can share that information. And it's like, even when I sit in front of groups talking, I tend to be just telling them stories about me. And then when they can relate that to themselves, there you go. It's like, okay. So you're just, really in life as a healer, I'm really just truly sharing my experience. And then I did learn to sit quite still a number of years ago. So then I just sit still with a person and hold the space, and we kind of fill it with information, I suppose, and the magic can happen.
I guess it's kind of like where you like you and me are now. We're having, well, hopefully we're going to have a conversation. But it's just having a heart to heart, isn't it? Sharing our connection, our thoughts, our emotions, our story, basically. That's where the healing comes in, is when you open up, and share what's going on.
When you speak from your heart and speak the truth, which society doesn't teach us to do that. It really doesn't. It almost keeps us away from it. And when you sit back and really try to feel what your deepest feelings are, and learn how to express that, there's so much healing in that. So as for me as a healer, a lot of times I'm just listening to people. One of the biggest compliments I get, you've been in the clinic, is people have many times, people have stood in front of me and cried as they speak to me. And they say to me, I'm crying because you're listening. I've been to the doctor and the specialist and the top person, and I wanted an answer, and he didn't even lift his head. He was looking at the screen. He's obviously looking at a scan or an x-ray, and he's writing information or reading information and not acknowledging the person in front of him.
I have actually experienced that myself, to be honest. At the dentist.
Yeah,
totally. It's like I wasn't even there.
Because they're doing a job that they do. They don't connect on that deeper level. It's not what they do. You're not going to get it from them, type of thing. So when you say healer, it comes in so many guises. Just to put a smile on a person's face, or just to listen, or just to touch them, or whatever it is you're doing. Another one, so many people lie down on that plinth, and when we're finished, they say to me, I haven't relaxed like this in 15 years. And then I ask, well, is it no wonder your back is full of tension? Or is it, you haven't listen to what you've just said. So, they could. It's like, okay, come back and relax next week for another half hour. You know?
What is it? What is it about that? Like, I mean, are we afraid to relax, to take time out, to look after our own bodies, our minds, and or to explore what's going on inside of us? Is there a
It's
fear there?
yeah,
Like, not to see what's going,
I mean, there's
what's really
fear.
inside.
Fear is a big part of it, but I think learning how to actually do it and understanding to learn first, but to understand that there's tremendous benefits to just give yourself that time out. You know, people are just too busy. It's a real. I see it today as society has just driven a bus to teachers. We should be successful. We should have materialistic gains all the time. We have to earn X amount of money to buy X amount of things, and that just robs all our time. And 10, 15 years later, you're wound up like a corkscrew and you've forgotten about relaxation. But I mean, even jump back further. Think of the school system that we go to. This is never mentioned. Now, I believe today in a lot of the schools they are bringing mindfulness teachings in, but again, it's only a tiny section in some schools. But at least it's been said. When I was a kid in school, there was none of that. We were being turned into robots, you know. And then here we are, you know, 40, 50, 60 years later, still robots, because that's how we were taught to be, you know. And I think that has a big part to play in it. I mean, all these practices that I've looked at that have definitely benefited me and benefit the work I do have all come from outside of Europe. You know, they're all Eastern teachings. Like the martial art that I studied was from Japan. The yoga, I went to India to study. I went to study with an Indian guy to study meditation. And anyone I've learned from that was worth putting the effort in had those, it was either directly in those teachings or people who helped me along the way here in Ireland, guided me through, had studied those practices themselves, you know. So you really do have to look outside the box to find ways of learning how to, let's just say, just quite simply relax and sit peacefully with yourself, if you like, to allow the stress or the mind to just stop for a moment. We never do
stop,
that.
Though.
We think
my mind is like, even when it wants to.
But you know, people think, yeah, I do relax. I go home, I sit in front of the television, I have a glass of wine, I have a box of chocolates, I do whatever, and that's fine. But that's not relaxing. You're still switched on.
Yeah,
you know, you're still
mind's still going 24/7.
So
it's hard to switch off that.
Of course, it is. Absolutely,
switch off that mind.
Takes lots and lots of practice.
Particularly
they say in the teaching when I studied meditation, one of the first things that was said was they reckon scientifically they think they've said they proved this. We have between 30,000 and 60,000 thoughts a day that go through our mind.
The same, yeah.
How do you stop that? You know, it's impossible always. You know, so yeah. So don't beat yourself up for your mind racing. It happens to us all.
Well, I've had, you might say, moments where it has kind of just calmed down, obviously by spiritual practice and by meditation and all these things. But I wouldn't say it ever just completely stops, stops moving. There's always something.
Yeah, I think that's possibly, and this is me guessing, okay, and it's just as we speak like this, you know, I went to India to a teacher who, so he goes way back with his family lineage is, they come from the Tantra lineage, the ancient teachings from the Vedas and things like that. And he said this idea of silent meditation is something that's only come in recent times, like a few hundred years ago, where when you look into the Vedic practices and the way they don't call it meditation, I don't think, but they would sit and chant sacred verses. And they're repeating them. And he, in particular, that guy would do this for 4 hours a day. Now that's not silent meditation, but what it is
Sound
connecting
vibration.
with sacredness in those words. So it's taking your mind completely out of the world and focusing on something that vibrationally those words have great meanings. So
Yeah, that's something
there,
similar that I
there
will
it
do.
is with sound,
Yeah.
and you're not going into the quiet mind, you know. So maybe we've just been steered a little bit away from the reality of what it should be in thinking we need to find a silent mind, you know. Maybe we need to, you know, I was brought up a Catholic, and you're taught to say prayers. And I remember many years later, I'm not a practicing Catholic, but I remember many years later, I was actually working with a priest. He was coming to me for treatments. And he was a lovely, lovely guy who was very open to Buddhism, and he'd studied it, and he'd looked at other religious teachings. And he said to me, he felt the biggest issue in the church was they don't teach people how to pray. And that's, to me, was the same thing. I remember thinking, wow, that's like the guys in India sitting on the corner chanting these sacred verses. They're doing it properly, where we weren't taught how to do it properly. So even in the Catholic or Christian religion, it's there. The prayer is maybe to focus you to just be with yourself rather than, you know, being all over the
Distracted.
place. So yeah. So those kind of teachings go back a long, long way, you know.
Yeah, it seems to be a lot of it seems to be coming from the East. I mean, it seems to be the up and coming sort of things nowadays, is that the East is having such a massive influence on the West.
Yeah.
In this regard, at least. So it does.
It's, you know, possibly again, what's the difference? I don't know. It's, for me, the difference is when you look at those teachings, and again, and I'm not beating up the Catholic Church or the Christians or anything like that. Don't take it that way. But for me, the absolute difference was, and this is just my personal view on it, was all those teachings from the East teach empowerment, where my experience growing up, going to the church, being in a school that was teaching me how to be in life, I was being told from day one I was a sinner. I had to look for forgiveness. I had to go to confession and tell my sins. You know, all this, it was taking my power away more rather than giving it to me. And maybe that's the difference. And who knows, before those teachings came, they say they're 2,000 years old. What was being taught in this part of the world before that? Because it was something that completely dominated and took over Europe, you know. So who knows? Maybe we had those teachings. I was reading somewhere about the Vedic teachings that you might know more about this, but that seemingly the tribes that brought those teachings to India came from Northern Europe, came from up around Russia and places like that. And they moved on down into India and settled and brought those teachings with them.
From my understanding, there's two schools of thought regarding that.
Yeah.
One is that India was the original Vedic culture, and it's, well, actually, to be honest with you, the world was originally a Vedic culture, far expanded outside of India, and then it came across, I think, from Northern Europe and down into sort of the lower parts in Western Europe, and then I think that's where. And then there's the other school of thought, which is that it actually originated in Europe and then went to India that way.
Yeah,
so it did. Two schools.
So it's interesting to we'll never know where it truly came from, will we? You know, we'll never know what was here before, you know. So, but for me, it's to look into those teachings, and I haven't even looked deep, you know, as such. I suppose I've just selfishly, and I mean that in a nice way, taken from the pieces from it. I'm still, I still physically practice a lot of yoga. So I love my physical body to be functioning well. And the difference with yoga and martial arts, which I did until I was 47, I don't get beaten up anymore.
Look at you.
All the injuries are gone. It's great, So it's still, I love to hold that physicality, So it's been good to me, and it's helped change my life in many, many ways. So it's been really good. That statement about we can only truly heal, the only person we can heal is ourselves. I can really sit here today now, 30 years later, and say I absolutely had to go with that without even lots of time realizing it, what I was actually doing. But I know if I'd stayed on the path I was on up to 30, you wouldn't have me sitting here today having this chat, We'd probably, well, you may not be, but I'd probably be sitting at a bar having a pint chatting to somebody talking rubbish, So yeah,
No,
that's the difference.
I understand. I mean, it was, obviously I had to do the same myself. I was, again, on the same path as you, just going through life meaninglessly, going to the bars, going to the pubs, trying to have fun and all that. And eventually there came to my point, which was, again, in my late 20s, it kind of shifted then. So it did. And then through my 30s was kind of when it really kind of took off a bit.
Yeah, I find working with people that with guys, you see that from mid-30s to mid-40s, if they're going to shift, that's usually when it happens. And a lot of times it comes through a crisis. And with women, it tends to happen almost 10 years earlier. And I don't know why or what that is, but in my experience, as even working with groups of people, teaching, doing what I do outside of the clinic, absolutely, I could say, hand on heart, that's what I've seen, that's what I've experienced. The guys tend to come in their late 30s,
late bloomers.
The girls come in their late 20s. And maybe it's because they're taking more responsibility. A lot of them are young mothers then at that stage. Maybe they're just,
I guess so,
realizing something. Then they mature quicker than the lads.
We just want to have fun for as long as we can. Until the body goes,
Yeah, absolutely, till the liver falls out. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So what would you teach? You just mentioned there that you teach. What would you teach?
I used to, when I started hosting workshops first, I used to just teach meditation, and like I did go to a school. There's a school in England called the Art of Findlay College, and they're all about mediumship. Their message is to absolutely prove that there's life after death. So they do it through mediumship. They do it through bringing messages through. They sit for to see energy and do the many things that a place like that will do. So I did visit them a few times, and when I started the host groups, I was playing around with that kind of stuff first. It gave me some tools to work with, teaching people to meditate and to explore the vision of seeing energy around a person and things like that. So that's how it started out. And then I realized that most people, that when I set it up properly, most people in the room would have the same experience. So I wonder, can I teach people how to work with this energy in a healing aspect? And I started to teach healing workshops where I would teach anybody, hey, come in, I'll show you how to put your hands on someone and help them. And what I realized then very quickly was, hang on a minute, what we really need here is, what brought me to this point was my own healing. So this is what I need to be doing. I need to be showing people that if you are prepared to have a deep look at yourself, then you can sit and hold that space for people. So really what I've been doing over the last 10 years is more or less that, holding, rather than someone coming in for a half hour for a healing session, spend a weekend with me and you watch what happens over the 2 days. And then I've had the opportunity in the last maybe 7 or 8 years to host week-long retreats. And that's when I see the real changes and magic happening, when somebody comes away for a week and just switches off completely and goes through whatever process they have to. And it starts off great. You have a few difficult days because everything starts to come forward emotionally, and then by the end of it, they want to kill me in the middle of the week, and by the end of it, they're hugging me and loving me, and they want to sign up for the next one, you know. But that's where I've really seen the profound healings happen, you know, on those week-long retreats. And yeah, what do I teach? I just like to think of it as holding space. When I do something like that, we cover the physical because we do yoga. So we'll do gentle yoga, nothing that, and you know, nobody can do. Everybody achieves something on the yoga mat. And then we do meditation, which again, I guide it all. So people that never did it before, well, they have the experience, they get there, but then I guide it. What I go after when I guide meditations with groups is I guide people into their hearts. And yeah, that's when it really starts to see the real magic happen, when people open their hearts. Because I think so many people have stories that has hurt them, love stories, let's say, whether, you know, when you say a love story, you might think with a couple, but I mean love stories in the sense of our life when we were children. I hear myself speaking a lot about let's take you back to when you were a child. Talk to me about your mother and father. How was that? And sometimes it's like, no, it was perfect. But then it's even to ask the question, well, as a child, let me go right back. I do hear myself saying this a lot. I think this. Here's what I think is key. We're in the womb for 9 months, and we're connected to another human being, our mother. And we spend basically most of that time listening to her heartbeat, listening to her breathing. And I'm sure the commotion outside, at some point we can start to hear all that. But it must be a beautiful, warm space to be just in that place, listening to that beautiful sound. That one of the most primal sounds, if not the most primal sounds, must be that heartbeat. As is that why tribes beat drums, you know? But when we separate at birth, there's our love story changing. And do we go seeking that love for the rest of our lives outside of ourselves instead of inside of ourselves? So as we grow as a child and we become able to stand up and communicate and all that, how can we ever understand what's going on in an adult's head? So you might have your two parents who you idolize, and you see them having an argument someday, and to you, that can be huge, even though to them it's not huge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So does that teach us trauma? Does that teach us hurt and pain? And how do we deal with that as that infant? Do we get picked up and nurtured, or is it not ignored but not acknowledged? And does that give us the pattern to work with towards love then, when we go out in the world seeking love? And when something disrupts it, when it gets a little bit dysfunctional, do we revert back to that pattern that we learned as that little infant? And do we carry that right through into adulthood? So therefore, if someone really unconsciously thinks about, I want to find love, but I know it's going to hurt me because it hurt me. Those two people I idolized hurt me at some point when I was a kid. They didn't mean to, but I felt that hurt. So am I afraid to truly love? And if we're seeking it outside ourselves, it's most likely we're going to meet that all the time, where we're never taught to seek it inside ourselves. Because the truth of it is, if I'm searching, and this is me guessing, if I'm searching for that deep sense of heartbeat again, let's say, that warm place that I came into first, I'm only truly going to find that if I sit silently or still with myself. you know. And that's where my thinking is these days. Now, it'll probably change as I get older, if I get older. But yeah, I find when I talk to people who are in trouble emotionally, we end up having these types of conversations of which emotion is. And I always try to keep it in lay terms. So I don't want to complicate and get all mystical with it. But I find myself asking, who's driving your bus? Is it a hurt child who's angry or frustrated or sorrowful, or, you know, the negative energies? Is it a hurt person who learned all this in their youth that's now driving the bus that should be getting driven by a mature adult who thinks clear, who doesn't let those emotions come forward and basically ruin their lives? And these emotions are energies. Emotions get developed by thoughts, and if the negative energy is driving my bus, then I must be thinking negatively most of the time. So on an energy level, that's going to get stuck somewhere. And I've watched it and had these conversations with people who can be quite ill and sick, and when you speak to them about this, it's like, wow, it's like a light bulb going on over the head, you know. And to be watching that over the years, to be watching these negative emotions that someone has carried all their lives, and they don't realize it because it has become who they are. And we all are afraid to truly look at ourselves because we might see something we don't like. But
that's the hard part, isn't it?
Yeah,
You really
yeah.
look at yourself and say, oh my God, I have this and this and this going on.
But it's
Excuse me.
when it's a person's normal way of being, that's who they are. And they can't see themselves any other way. But the sad part is I've watched it with so many people turn into quite serious illnesses, you know. If you think, for instance, I was speaking to a girl the other day who's in her mid-50s, and a friend of hers asked me, is it okay if I get this girl to contact you? And unfortunately for her, she's in hospital with cancer. And as we spoke, I'm like, well, where did the cancer present itself? And it was in her breast. So to me, that's the heart. That's the heart chakra. So immediately then I want to know, well, tell me a love story, because that's our emotional muscle, if you like. And we all want our heart to be in love. So as I spoke to this girl, tell me a love story, she's like, yes, I've had many love stories. And I'm like, no. Take me right back to your deepest love story, the one with your parents. And it turned out that as we had the conversation, there was an amazing moment in it. Let me just jump aside for a moment. This girl has been a therapist, a fully qualified osteopath, and her mother was a nurse, and she felt as a child that the mother was always almost, she didn't use these words, but there was a sense of almost, that one is sick again. Oh, that one is sick again. I was always the one who was sick, she said, you know. And the mother the child had the sense of being fobbed off because she was always sick. So as she grew up, the determination was to prove this woman wrong. So she becomes an osteopath, not a nurse. She doesn't follow in the footsteps. She goes alternatively. Yeah. So there's a bit of rebellion in there. But what's driving that is the frustration of that child, which has now, frustration becomes anger. So when I said to her, tell me about your anger, we're on the phone. I wasn't looking at her. No, we'd switched on the cameras, and she just started to cry. And I was almost like, how did you know? And I'm like, talk to me about your anger. It doesn't matter. Just talk to me about that. So then she had this realization, because we'd spoke briefly about her husband, and she told me some negative things. And she also said to me, I have this beautiful husband who can't come into me in the hospital right now because of COVID restrictions and all. We only have very limited time. And he sits downstairs reading the paper and she said to him, why do you do that? Why don't you go home? And he said, I want to be close to you, as close to you as I can be right now. So she's like, he's so beautiful, but he has this. And I'm like, so how's that relationship been? Have you been beating him up? Have you been throwing this anger at him? And she's, oh my God, oh Jesus. And so all of a sudden the realization was coming that, oh my God, I'm an angry person. I didn't get this before. Now she's someone who, and she told me I can tell this story. She's someone who has looked at self-work, but was trying to do it on her own. Now, doing it on her own, how could she ever admit that she was an angry person? You know, we're not going to do that. I'm lovely. When I see myself, there's nothing wrong with me, you know, something wrong with you and you and you. But the funny thing was, here she was in the hospital, and she was rebelling against the hospital because she tried to work and heal the cancer alternatively. And now she's in the hospital and she doesn't want their treatments. The nurses are lovely, but she's being treated terrible in here. And she was getting into that one. It was a battle for her in the hospital. And I was able to stop. Let's go back to your mother, who was a nurse. You've just spoke beautifully about those nurses. You've called them angels. Your mother was an angel. She was one of those. And you don't see that aspect of her. You're just stuck in the frustration of how you thought she was treating you. Maybe as a child, she was trying to lift you by treating you the way she was treating you rather than mollycoddle you or whatever, you know. Because look at what those people do on a daily basis. They're expert carers. They're beautiful people. And there you are in fighting with them. Can you surrender to them as you surrender to your mother and forgive? Because you're holding this thing against your mother, and it's held all that angry energy inside you, and now you have cancer. And cancer can be a very angry illness. And there's just saying those words, just her agreeing with the conversation, falling apart, crying, laughing about it, you know, going through all her emotions, but realizing, oh my God, I have to do something about this. That alone can be the switch that heals her illness. Because is it the root cause? So we can go along and come to people like me as a healer. We can go to the hospital, the doctors, we can take tablets, we can take this, that, and the other. If we don't get in and understand the deepest part of what maybe created the illness within me, am I going to truly heal it then, you know? And that's where I'm at today as a healer, seeing people like this and having lots of conversations with people who unfortunately are dealing with serious illnesses, you know. And every time I have this type of conversation, you just see the tears coming and the realization of, wow, it's like I'm creating this myself. Now, that can be a huge statement or just an acceptance. Oh, if I've created it, I can change it. They have it that simple, you know. And if that sets you on a journey for change and real healing, then anything is possible, you know, I see. And then it's truly, am I the healer? No, I'm just sharing my experience and how I see people. You're going to take care of the healing yourself if you agree with me first and foremost, because I could be talking through my you know what. But if that sits well with you, that conversation, and it gives you tools to move forward and bring in happiness rather than, you know, happiness, joy, and love. We don't need anything else, you know. So
we don't want anything else.
No.
Really.
We're all looking for it, you know, and we've just got so stuck because these type of conversations are laughed at, you know, by the medical people, by by the people that many people look up to, you know, this kind of stuff, because it is in itself, I suppose, a bit mystical, and science wants to prove everything, and unfortunately it can't prove this stuff, you know. It just can't. And this stuff is ancient. And like I said, you know, those ancient teachings taught me about empowerment. That's what empowerment is: understanding who you are, truly who you are, and being able to sit in that presence then to experience your power, I suppose. And it's taken away from us on every corner of life as we grow up, you know. So yeah.
You know, but and we probably don't even realize the different things that impact us through our whole life, and what we're carrying around. You know, those emotions and thoughts that have been kind of with us from childhood, probably.
They're our best friends. And they can be killing us and we don't know. You know, my big one that I really truly met in the biggest profound healing that I had was understanding that the feeling I had in my solar plexus was nothing but fear and anxiety. And it was the thing that kept me awake every night. It was the thing that didn't let me put my head on the pillow peacefully. It would wake me at 3 and 4 in the morning. I'd be lying in the bed, terrified with this feeling inside me, and I didn't know what the hell it was. And when I did a weekend workshop and it got rid of it, and I looked for that for about a week after, trying to, where's it gone? I was almost in a panic. Where's my bunny gone? Yeah, it's incredible how we hold on to my anxiety, my fear, you know. We own it, we want to keep it, you know. The thought of change is terrifying, you know. So
yeah, it's
so that's what I teach. Sorry, that was a long answer.
Oh yeah, no, that's great, because that's kind of the topics I was hoping to touch on, was like, you know, restricting our thoughts and our emotions, and how that really kind of, you know, affects us, you know, through our whole life. I mean, I notice it. I'm only just beginning to kind of get into it and notice myself, you know, when, you know, I have, you know, like you were saying about anger, I've noticed is kind of coming to the forefront now for me. At this stage of my life, you know, and obviously that's coming from somewhere in my past, and I haven't really connected what the root of it is, but I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it now, and then it's kind of impacting on other people in my life, like my wife,
people around you,
and family members and friends and my children. And it's going to have an impact on my children, and I need to find out how to kind of change that, I guess you might say, you know.
Well, my typical just answer to that would be, what it most likely is this. And again, I'm just speaking from experience, from my experience and from the experience of working with a lot of people. When anger is at the forefront, I feel it's the warrior, it's the protector. It's like, don't you dare come near my heart, because this has been hurt. So you stay out there, everybody. Who do we throw it at first and foremost? The people that are closest to us. They're the ones who love us, and we want to love them. But there's something in me, and I don't know what it is, that hurt me at some point. And you dare not come near that again. So therefore, I'll be angry. I'll push you away. I'll make you not like me. Now, if you can realize that, it's like Deepak Chopra, when I was studying with him, he spoke about when you try to bring the ego towards spirituality, it kicks and screams like a little child. It goes crazy. It'll do everything to drag you away from over there because it doesn't know. What it knows is ego. It knows who it is. And if you try to take it over there into an unknown place, it's going to go crazy. So I see the anger a bit like that. It's like, no, stay out there. Don't come near me. If I can accept the love that's around me and allow it to come in, I'll most likely, and again, I've seen this, meet then tears and sadness. But in the right, like for instance, that's what happens on the retreats. The people come, and after maybe 2 days of doing some work with them, breathing, meditation, yoga, just getting them to relax, the anger comes up and they want to kill me as you brought me here, I want to escape. And then the tears come. Not for everybody, but the tears can come, and there can be a day or so of sobbing. But then when it's over, it's like, wow, is this really me? This is what I came for. So what we're doing with the anger, I feel, is just using it as the protector, not to let people or let me back into that place of love, because love hurt me before, and I hold that memory. It's imprinted in there. But if we realize that love is one thing, it's not going to hurt you truly. If you find it within yourself, you'll have so much respect for yourself, because the problem is when we look for love that's hurt us, it's hurt us previously. So therefore, there's some sort of dysfunction around it. So if that's the love I've learned, dysfunctional love, I'll search for it in the world. It'll be dysfunctional when I find it, and it will absolutely hurt me at some point. If I find it within myself, and I truly acknowledge that I first and foremost respect who I am, I start to nurture myself through all aspects of, let's say, the food I eat, the practices I bring in, like if they're spiritual, like yoga or meditation or whatever, it doesn't matter. Whatever brings that sense of peace to me, I start to find joy, and I start to see life with a different pair of eyes. Now the love I find, because I'm really respecting who I am, I'm loving who I am, I won't go for dysfunctional love, because why would I? That's second best. I'm going to go for the top table. I'm going to go for what I'm now feeling inside. And that's the difference. So you're a lot younger than me, obviously, and you've young child or children, is it?
Two now.
Two, yeah. So these are the big challenges for you. These little guys coming into our lives are amazing, because you want to meet them in love now.
Yeah,
and I
course.
feel from someone like you that you want that love to be the purest it can be. So of course you're going to meet the anger along the way, but you'll break through it, and you'll be such a better person for it. And what you'll share with those children then will be that pure love, It's just part of where you're going, the way that the spiritual practice that you look at. I know you haven't initiated, sure you haven't. You were telling me the last time.
No, I'm not initiated at the minute.
Yeah. So, but that practice that you're connected to is fantastic as well. You know what I mean? Talk about empowerment. It's a beautiful thing you guys are doing. I had an amazing experience with one of the big teachers. I don't know the names. He wrote that book. Is it called A Journey Home?
Yeah, Radha Swami.
Yeah, I met him in India, and
okay.
I got to a lecture and a kirtan with him. Yeah.
Okay.
And then of course when I got to meet him and he signed the book, I got a book for Karuna, and I got him to sign it for her. And in his book he speaks about when he was young and he was going off to the Isle of Wight festival to see Jimi Hendrix and all that. And his plane journey ended up sitting with a guy called Johnny Winter. And Johnny Winter just happens to be my favorite guitar player. So I'm up in front of this guy who spells very highly, and I'm asking him about Johnny Winter, and he just smiled and told me all about it. And that was so beautiful. No airs or graces about him. He met me in that place and we laughed about it, So, and there it is, there's your spirituality, there's your healing, non-judgmental, just sharing the love, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of something I've just been kind of reflecting on. Was, is healing this area. Probably the foremost thing we need to heal is the heart.
Yeah.
It seems to get, like, I can feel the tension that's there because of maybe anger or whatever, or frustration that might be going on in my body. So that for me is kind of what I need to really start focusing on and healing it. Probably for most people, it's that. Although there are obviously other ailments that are in the body as well, but it seems that the heart is the biggest thing we need to heal for ourselves.
Well, it is the emotional center, and whatever emotion, like I said, is driving your bus, it's going to come from there. It is the emotional center, So, yeah. And when you connect with it, you'll find all these things. One of the things I do, visualization, I used to do this one a lot at the beginning of a 2-day workshop. I'd ask people to close their eyes and I'd speak them into breath work. And then I'd say, I want you to breathe into your heart. Just breathe. Just imagine you're breathing into it. And then I would say things like, okay, if your heart had a face, is it sad? Is it smiling? And to find out, what's that face look like right now? What did you bring here today, right now? What picture is on that heart? And we would discuss it and then work for the rest of the day and work the next day. And then at the end, we'd do it again. And so what picture's on your heart now? Is it smiling now after what we've just done for 2 days? And inevitably you would always get, yes. What color is it? Is it dark? Oh, it's black. It's this. I can't even find it. And then the following day, it's bright like the sun. It's white, it's, yeah. It's an amazing part of our body. And, when it stops beating, we're done. So, yeah, it's the one we need to take care of. And, we're taught again to take care of it through the food we eat, health, fitness, the food we eat, all this. And then you see some of the fittest athletes in the world just dropping dead of a heart attack, What the hell is going on there,
Too much.
Because
too much
they're never told to look after it emotionally, Free it off, lighten it up, really get in and find those things that are blocking it.
But isn't that like we from a stage of being young, we don't learn any of these things, and we don't know what to do when these things happen. Our emotions start exploding, you might say. Whatever emotional
nobody
state we're
knows
in.
what to do with it.
We're just like, whoa.
Like think about it. It's, again, here's something I'm often speaking about. I'm 60 now, so my dad remembers his dad kissing him goodnight and going up to Belfast and signing up for the British Army and going off to World War II. So I'm just 3 generations, granddad, father, me. And now imagine the fear that instilled, living in those times with that threat hanging over the world. So as his father comes back 5 years later or 4 years later, having been in a prison or a war camp, what must he have been like emotionally? How could he be in any fit state emotionally to rear
a child,
children who aren't going to be in dysfunction? And I just mean dysfunction in the sense of love, because the fear must have been huge. So then my dad becomes an adult and he brings me into the world. But who's teaching me how to be in this world? He's a lovely guy. My dad is still alive. He's 89 now. He's a great guy. We all get on great with him and all that. But there's been dysfunction all along the way, and it's just, I think, accepting that. How could they teach us on that deep level when they grew up with those huge fears around them, And think back to Ireland and in the 60s, the 50s, the 60s, even the 70s, how poor it was, what the struggle was like. We were too busy. The adults were too busy just trying to make ends meet. They didn't have the time to. We're very lucky in these generations that we actually have got the time to look at these things, And And what they did in those generations, they handed it over to the church. And unfortunately, most of those guys that I think were in that system just didn't want to be there. That was just, oh, if you're a priest, you're a good person. They must have been so frustrated, those guys, so many of those guys. And what did they do? They took it out on us, you know. Same with the Christian brothers who had us in schools for many, many years, teaching us as young children who would be influenced. Most of those guys were just frustrated, angry men, you know, that didn't want to be there. They just, it was almost like it's a one, you know, a family. If we can have a nurse and a nun and a priest and a brother in the family, we're successful, you know. Sure, they were
It's
just
strangely enough
thrown in,
that
you know?
that was the case, because
Yeah.
I know someone who worked with nuns, and that was the case. There, one of the daughters was basically sent off to be a nun. They didn't want to necessarily be, but they were just given that role, so to speak.
Where when you like the practice that you follow, that's a choice.
Yeah, it's a choice.
To go into into Krishna consciousness, it's a choice for you. Nobody's forcing your hand. So you'll either do it or you won't do it, and you'll make the right choice. So you won't be frustrated with it then in the end, you know. And if you are, you can walk away. Where these poor unfortunates that we were left with them as young children. So, you know, no wonder this thing doesn't know what to be doing with itself. You know? Yeah, so
but I think this is just my perception of things, that people are starting to become more aware and to make changes slowly, but it's starting to happen. I mean, I've seen it in people around me who just in this last year or two, you know, because of the pandemic and so many other things have changed, have shifted themselves to a more spiritual practice and contemplating, you know, about themselves and about life and everything like that. Even to become a vegetarian.
You know? No, there's lots of good stuff coming forward, but there's also, and I suppose just in my work, I see a lot of the negative side of what people are left with. Because one thing I will say about those systems, they did guide us in a direction. I think the core teaching in all religions is love. If you look right down to the core teaching of it, it all has one message. And then humans get in the way and become the teachers, you know.
Okay,
but what was I going to say there? Yeah, a lot of people have walked from it completely. It's dying in this country particularly, but then they're left to their own devices, and that's as big a struggle as any, being left to your own devices. You've nowhere to turn. And here's a funny one for you, and this is what I'm trying to say, I suppose. I remember I read in a book one time that going back hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, what they found was that people tend to gather around the biggest buildings. And a couple of thousand years ago, the biggest buildings were castles, and the villages gathered around the castles, and that's where society and the people came. And then those big buildings got taken over by churches. And just go around Europe and see the size of the churches. Some of them are huge, as big as castles. And the masses of people came there. Now, what's the biggest buildings today?
Skyscrapers.
Shopping centers.
Okay.
Where do people go at the weekends?
Yeah, they live in the shopping centers.
Yes. So look at the shift into materialism. That's a dead end. There's only short-term gratification. If I buy something new and I try it on, oh, that's lovely, I feel great, and the next morning that feeling is gone. So then I have to go and do it again and again and again. So now I'm chasing something that's completely false. And those people can be quite lost. And that's where you see all the anxiety building and all the negativity building and all that, because they're not finding something that's truly bringing that deep sense of peace within. It's all short term, you know. And that's a big problem in the world today, you know. And, you know, working someone the way I work now, I am seeing so much of it with especially teenagers struggling with anxieties. And unfortunately, those anxieties are being fed by their thoughts. And as they grow older with those thoughts not changing, those anxieties are going to become quite serious illnesses, you know. And look at the major illnesses that are out there. Look at the way cancer has taken over, you know. And excuse me, it's such an emotional disease. The amount of breast cancers is that the heart issues, you know, because it's in that heart energy area, and so on and so on, you know. And it really is just coming back to us in with ill health, you know. So it's quite an interesting one to watch, and it's funny the way for me starting out as a body worker that it tends to be that's where my work seems to be going nowadays. It's just moving with the trend, or maybe I can just see it much clearer than I could all those years ago, you know. So yeah, that's where I'm at today.
Cool. It's certainly very I find it quite amazing what you do, actually, you know, to be able to really see people, you know, and give them that time and your energy, I suppose.
It took a lot of hard work.
I can imagine it did. Years, obviously, you know.
It's not easy.
Nowadays it's like I want it now and I want it tomorrow, as soon as quickly as possible, but it takes almost a lifetime or half your life to kind of get
it is it's a lifetime pursuit, but it like I've had half and half, you know, because I had 30 years leading up to it, beginning this journey as such, and now it's 30 years later, and I can look back and go, wow, you know. I mean, here's one I see very clear. The girl I married, let me get rid of that. Sorry about that. The girl I married, when we split, and it doesn't, the reasons for that split don't matter, you know, but I went one way and she stayed with herself in the process she was in, I suppose. And that brought heartache and that brought breast cancer. And by the time she was 46, she passed away, you know. And I often look at myself and say, if I hadn't have brought those changes in, that could have easily been me as well, you know, because she taught me so much, known her since she was 17 and being with her as she was passing away, you know, being friends with her, helping her through the illness or helping her as she was ill, and to watch that one just unfold and to know that I was a part of that for many, many years, and that could have easily been me. And I absolutely know by getting into these practices that's why it wasn't me, you know. And it gave me so much more. It gave me my life back. It just gave me a whole different way of seeing the world. I've been so lucky with it all. I've traveled the world to study and to teach, and you know, it's just brought so much joy and happiness into my life just working with these practices. Yeah. Different human being. It's great.
Cool.
Yeah.
So just before we finish up, you know, if someone wants to get in touch with you or wants to learn from you or do one of these retreats with you, where can they get in touch with you?
My website, everything I have is just under my name. My website is markcleary.net. All the information about the retreats aren't on that, but you can just fill in just a small little form, and I'll then send you an email with all the information, because it's quite a bit of information. The clinic, again, all the information, everything I do is on markcleary.net. My Facebook page, Mark Cleary, my Instagram, Mark Cleary. I announce everything on those, and you can just connect with me through those. I make it easy, you know.
Good. You might find my name popping up there soon enough.
Yeah. And I have 2 retreats this year that I need to gather groups of people for.
Right, cool. Where are the retreats on?
I do them in the south of Spain. Here's one of the things that truly, absolutely happens when you get into this mode is life just brings things to you, you know. I moved to Spain 5.5 years ago. I know you're going to finish. I won't keep you long. And circumstances with my partner's mother changed the plan that we had. We were moving to the east of Spain. She lived in the center of Spain, and her husband had a stroke. So we moved over there to help them out because my partner's an only child. And in that, it was like, there was a sense of, I'm stuck here and I didn't want to be here. But, you know, you do these things for family. But very soon after being there, I found this incredible retreat center half an hour from where I was living. Now, I moved to Spain with a plan to set up my own retreat center. And I find this place that I could never build unless I won the Euro Million. And I can rent that now for a week and host 20 people in luxurious surroundings. And the guys who run it are just beautiful, switched on to all this stuff as well. And they just get out of your way and give you the place. There's an amazing vegan chef there. She's an artist with the food. And it's just like, oh, wow, why would I ever build a retreat center when I can rent this one, you know? So that's the place I use, you know, and it's just amazing place. And that's the only type of work that gets done there nowadays is this type of work, you know, so they encourage that. So, yeah. So that's where we host the retreats in the south of Spain.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great.
Hopefully in the middle and during the summer months.
Yeah, well, we've won in June and we've won in October, so yeah.
All right, brilliant.
Anybody wants to come, just give me a call. Plenty of space there this year.
Right. Okay, Mark. Mark, it's been great talking to you again.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
I'm just checking the Facebook. I don't see any comments, but if anyone does have any questions, they can post them to Mark on his webpage or Facebook page.
Yeah.
Straight up. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm afraid, we've run a little bit over time, but that's okay. Mark, I'll be in touch soon about different things, hopefully.
Okay.
And we'll talk again.
Yeah, right, thanks.
Thank you for coming.
Okay. De nada, as they say in Spain.
Sorry?
De nada, as they say in Spain.
Nada.
You're welcome.
No, I do have family in Spain, up in the north. Where is it? Bilbao. Yeah, Bilbao.
It's 9 hours away from.
Yeah.
I've driven into I've been on the boat a couple of times out of Bilbao. They go from Bilbao to Rosslare, so yeah, I've done that a few times. Yeah. Okay, I'll let you wrap it up. I won't keep you any longer.
Thank you for coming.
Namaste.
Nice to see you. Namaste.
Yeah. Okay.
Everyone has a story to tell. Shining a light on stories that uplift us, that change us, that inspire us. The Yogi Hour. Listen, be inspired.